Hello and welcome to this overview of the essential takeaways from BNamericas Mining Outlook for 2022. My name is Laura Superno. I'm a senior editor at BNamericas, and I am joined by three members of our mining editorial team, Sam Williams, Rogerio Gelmeyer, and Concheta Cacciatore. Hello, everyone. So,
Hello.
Good morning. Let's jump right in. Sam, if you could first walk us through some of the big trends you're seeing for the year ahead in mining, please.
Okay, yes, thanks, Laura. Hello, everyone. So perhaps the most important trend to look out for next year relates to metal prices. Prices of most of Latin America's key minerals have surged in the last year or so. And while many have slipped back from their recent highs, analysts are forecasting pretty solid prices in 2022. And this is pretty much across the board in both industrial and precious metals. So of course this is going to help mining companies deliver some healthy margins and strong cash flows in the year ahead. And this trend may be further supported by a strong US dollar compared to many local Latin American currencies. So prices and cash flows look likely to remain strong, but at the same time spending will be limited. This is really due to a general lack of construction-ready projects in the region, as well as ongoing efforts in the industry to maintain capital discipline. So spending plans for 2022 are likely to focus on brownfield expansions and optimization projects. So the combination of strong metal prices and cash flows on the one hand, and a lack of growth and investment opportunities on the other hand, is likely to support M&A activity in the sector, as acquisitions will be the only way for many companies to achieve any growth or to prop up their pipelines. And then moving on to the political front, I think political risk appears to be a growing threat to mining companies in Latin America, with the potential to derail projects and undermine investments. And this trend is likely to continue in 2022 in most of the region. So while the COVID-19 threat is receding, one real area of focus for mining companies in the year ahead is going to be on cutting carbon emissions, which is something that investors are obviously increasingly demanding. So the vast bulk of the region's biggest miners have committed to net zero emissions by 2050, and companies will be looking to set or improve on near-term carbon commitments next year, and taking the actions required to get them on the path towards net zero. So I think these are really some of the key trends in the industry in 2022. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Sam, for the overview. I'd like to go ahead and take a look at some of these issues around the region, starting perhaps with the issue of investment climate, which has maybe worsened in general over the region over the last year. We've seen rising political risk. In some cases, this is taking the form of resource nationalism. I'd like to ask each of you about the situation in the specific parts of the region in which you each specialize, what you're seeing in terms of investment climate, particularly political risk, and what to expect for 2022. Concheta, would you like to tell us first about what's going on in Chile and Argentina?
Yes, sure. Hello, Laura, Sam, Rogerio. Well, in Chile, there is a lot of expectation due to presidential elections. A week ago, right-winger José Antonio Cast and left-winger Gabriel Boric came out on top in the first round. And Cast's main proposal for the sector is to issue shares in Codelco to all Chileans and review the current tax system and add a levy on copper exports if they include elements such as rare earths. while Boric plans to create a national lithium company, as well as promoting a combined royalty considering the value of the mineral extracted, but he also wants to include green taxes on CO2 and diesel. In Chile, around 8% of current mining contracts have tax invariability until 2024, and Boric programs says that tax invariability will be respected. An important element for investors now is also the current debate of the royalty bill that would add a 3% tax on sales of copper and lithium, plus a progressive tax depending on the market price of copper. This bill already received the lower house approval and passed the Senate's Mining and Energy Committee, but a plenary Senate discussion is still pending. In Argentina, the federal government is preparing an electromobility legislation draft, while the provincial governments of Salta, Jujuy, and Catamarca recently signed an agreement to create a lithium region, seeking to bolster new projects and research in the area, in the lithium market. This electromobility bill aims to set rules while including tax benefits for the manufacturing and purchasing of electric vehicles. Also, the country's authorities are also working on a new strategic plan for mining development, and which may include a new export duty scheme for mining projects, and they also published more recently new rules for the investment promotion regime, including the creation of an investment project assessment commission and an investment project registry. So we have different scenarios, but a lot of expectancy.
Thank you, Conchetta. It sounds like a combination of, like you say, things to be concerned about and things to be hopeful about. Rogério, what are you seeing in Brazil?
Thanks, Laura. Actually, in Brazil, the main risks here are associated also with international factors. The most important commodities in Brazil is iron ore. It represented 2/3 of production and exports, and the main market for Brazil is China. So what happened with that is that the robust demand of China for this commodity put the price at the high level since the start of the pandemic. And due to that, the mining segment in Brazil performs very well compared with multiple other segments in the economy. And this, at the start of this year, increased the pressure against the mining companies in terms for more taxes. This pressure came from Congress members and also from some state governments, especially from Pará state government. This pressure, it's important to say that this pressure doesn't come from federal government. And what is happening more recently is that the iron ore prices are in decline, and this pressure in terms for mining companies is good because this pressure reduced due to the reduction of the prices as well. And for the next year, the mainly focus of stakeholders in the mining sector in Brazil is to looking for the performance of China. Not only about the demand, but also to measure it, be used as a barometer for this kind of pressure. In the next year, Brazil has a presidential election as of October, and a new president or the elected president, Bolsonaro, if it is the case, will take place only in 2023. But the federal government pressure is not the most likely scenario for the mining sector. It's important to use the past as a benchmark. During the past Workers' Party administration from the leftist former Lula president, the mining segment was performed pretty well, and the leftist administration understands very well the importance of the mining segment, keep companies acting in a free way, and also under a Bolsonaro administration, this situation persists. So I don't see pressures from the federal government came in the next year or even in the 2023. But we need to check the situation with China, which is the main client of Brazil, and it's an important barometer of the appetite of companies also for new investments and projects.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rogério, very much for the overview. Coming back to you, Sam, will you tell us what's happening in Mexico?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's fair to say in Mexico that many of the mining companies are really crying out for some measure of political certainty following some of the controversial actions by President Andrés López Obrador, also known as AMLO. So AMLO has put a freeze on new mineral concessions in Mexico. He's also overseen a real tightening up of environmental permitting. There have been a string of permit applications that have been rejected under his administration. There are also concerns about proposals to bring lithium resources under state control, which AMLO has said could lead to some companies being stripped of existing concessions. However, the reforms which include these proposed changes in the lithium industry have been postponed until sometime in the second half of 2022. They may be watered down or even scrapped in order to secure support for them in both houses of Congress. So we're going to have to wait a bit longer to see what's happening there. So yeah, back to you, Laura.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. I will go ahead and give our view on what's to be expected in the Andean region. In Peru, we're seeing a backdrop of quite a bit of political shakeup after the election of the leftist candidate last year, Pedro Castillo, and he had a real bumpy start to his presidency in terms of establishing the cabinet and getting things going. A risk for mining in 2022 is going to be an ongoing discussion about mining taxation in the country and kind of a push from some sides to increase the state's share. The threat of Castillo coming in and like nationalizing assets appears to have reduced significantly compared to his initial campaign rhetoric. But actions such as what we saw in the last few days, the mining minister decided to suspend the permits at 4 kind of mid-size precious metal mines, foreign-owned mines, after a meeting with community groups and with no discussion with the operators was a very negative signal. Despite I think a recognition in the country, at least in some segments, that mining is going to be very important to economic recovery in Peru. It's one of the sectors where we're going to actually see investment and GDP growing in the year ahead. In Colombia, things were looking very positive until another surprise occurred there, which was a decision by the environmental authority to archive the environmental license for the Quebradona copper project, which is a $1.4 billion project that was expected to start construction in 2022, and which really underpins a lot of the near-term expectation around copper in the country. Presidential elections are coming up in May next year, and so now that combined with the Quebradona decision, industry leaders are worried that other investment decisions will be postponed. The current presidential frontrunner is Gustavo Petro. He ran also against Duque last time. He's a left-leaning ex-guerrilla senator who is considered to have a pretty solid chance of winning and would bring quite a bit of uncertainty to most sectors in terms of what his policies would be. And in Ecuador, what we call judicialization of projects, issues going to court over projects has become an issue in the last years. And the main project that's targeted to start construction in 2022 Loma Larga, which is a $300 million gold project, is facing claims that it is subject to a community vote that took place early in 2021, that the people voted to ban mining in sensitive water recharge zones. The company says the project is not in such a zone and that the vote was not retroactive to begin with, but communities say otherwise. It's unclear exactly what's going to happen because the Constitutional Court did say that it was not retroactive, but the situation sends a bad message overall for investment. So if we take that with what my colleagues, you guys all shared a few minutes ago regarding the situations in your different areas of expertise, where does it leave us for spending and actual activity in 2022? So I'd like to ask each of you what you are seeing in terms of project activity and investment for the coming year. Maybe Rogério, you could start telling us about Brazil.
Yes, thanks a lot again. It's important to follow Vale, first of all, not only because Vale is the main company in Brazil in mining sector, but also as Vale is working to resume its production level lost after the Brumadinho tailings dam disaster. So despite the uncertainty with China, things, a lot of doubts about the performance of the iron ore market, the expectation is that the Vale is working to increase again its production levels, so which will obligate Vale to use more investments and increase its capex plans for the next few years, not only about the next year. And also, Vale is working, along with the other stakeholders of the sector, is working to diversify its production. So Vale is looking to more production in terms of nickel and the copper, and also CSN Mineração is another important company to follow up, because CSN Mineração did the IPO process early this year, and this company has a lot of cash on hands to use it for its capex plans for the coming years, not only for the next year. But also, I would like to say that as part of this effort of the mining segment in Brazil to looking for more diversification, we had the different players also looking to expand investment, such as Canadian gold company Aura Minerais. Those guys are looking to expand the importance of Brazil in terms of revenues. Aura Minerais has operations in Mexico, Ecuador, and they close a mining in US, and the focus of Aura Minerais now is in Brazil, in the so-called the Almas project. Also, Nexa Resources, the company of the Votorantim Group, also is planning to go ahead with a new project in Brazil, and this company also looks for more importance of Brazil in terms of revenues. At this moment, Peru is the most important revenue source for Nexa Resources, and they see Brazil has more important in the coming years. So companies still did not unveil details of their capex plans for the next year, but I expect, and we are looking for more diversification, of those companies, to looking for new investments in new areas, especially those areas linked with energy renewable companies, energy renewable projects, linked with clean energy. Okay?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. A lot of diversification. I heard that word several times, so I think that's something to be watching for advances on that in Brazil next year. Sam, would you tell us about investment expectations in Mexico?
So in terms of spending on projects, we have around 6 or 7 projects which we expect to begin production in 2022. These are generally fairly small projects, each involving total capex of less than $200 million. I mean, looking more broadly at Mexico's $8 billion mining pipeline of projects, which are due to come on stream by 2028. Next year, companies will also be looking to advance some larger projects in this pipeline, which are coming on stream later in the coming years. And these are mainly focused on gold, silver, and copper assets, as well as one lithium asset. I think overall, probably spending is likely to remain roughly stable compared to 2021 next year. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. Concheta, tell us what you're seeing in Chile, Argentina.
Yes, I will start with Argentina, where miners are already preparing to jump on the opportunities. Orocobre is advancing the Olaroz expansion in Jujuy, which is around over 70% progress. Then we have BNamericas advancing the Caucharí Olaroz project with Ganfeng, which operations will start in mid-2022. And we have also Zijin Mining, which recently announced the acquisition of Neolithium, which has the Tres Quebrada project in Catamarca. And more recently, Landin announced that it will invest 4.2 billion in the Jose Maria copper and gold project. This is in San Juan province. And they target the first production for 2026. The original capex of this project was 3.9 billion. But an important thing for spending and project activity in Argentina is a flexibility policy regarding the foreign exchange. Last week, I talked with the president of the mining chamber, and he called for greater flexibility in foreign exchange and import policies in order to attract more investments in the sector. Among the requests is the zero withholding tax for investment projects, free access to the exchange market for the repayment of debt by mining companies or their subsidiaries, as well as the prompt reimbursement of VAT for large projects. In Chile, expectancy over spending remains. Cochilco recently downgraded the country's mining investment portfolio for 2030 to 68.9 billion, and the previous figure was over 70 billion. A couple of weeks ago, the mining undersecretary Edgar Blanco said that investment forecast could drop in the coming months as a result of the things that I already mentioned, the royalty debate and the presidential elections, and the industry bosses have warned that too. For example, Freeport McMoran, the CEO of Freeport McMoran, said that they will postpone investment decisions until there is more clarity on regulatory and tax-related changes. And Antofagasta Minerals also warned that the new projects are facing more regulatory uncertainties.
Okay, yeah, definitely. The scenario in Chile is lacking in certainty right now, I think. I'll take us again through the Andean region, what we're expecting for projects and investment. In Peru, the forecasts from the mining ministry say that investment will grow by about 15% next year to $6 billion. There are two big projects scheduled to start operation. Those are Quellaveco, the greenfield, and then the Toromocho expansion. And then we see works scheduled to start at two important projects next year, the Rio Seco copper plant and the Magistral project. Another one to watch is going to be the Yanacocha sulfide expansion. The company postponed the investment decision last year, but they are looking at putting like $500 million into the project next year, so not a small number. still in Peru, industry leaders are saying that they do expect mining companies to advance projects more slowly as they wait for clarity on the changing operating environment under President Castillo, that I described earlier. In Colombia, greater clarity following that Quebradona decision, the project license suspension or archiving, and also once elections take place, that clarity is going to be necessary to see whether the mining sector can achieve the $1.5 billion annual investment, which is a target in the country's national development plan. Construction is expected to start next year at the Gramalote gold project, big project, $700 million. While the Alacran project, also about $700 million, is expected to obtain its environmental license by the end of next year. And then other projects to watch in 2022 are going to be expansions in the gold sector. Gran Colombia Gold, Mineros, and Aris Gold are all working on projects in Colombia. And over in Ecuador, as I mentioned, the key project to watch is Loma Larga, both as the first project to possibly enter construction for several years, and also because of those legal issues that are surrounding it. Construction is also targeted to begin at the La Plata project and the Curipamba project. And those three projects together would really help to consolidate Ecuador's formal mining industry, which so far only has the two other mines in operation. Something else to watch for 2022 in Ecuador is the launch of a digital platform containing information on all of the concessions in the country, a launch by the government, after which it is expected that new areas would be opened up for exploration. So something to watch in Ecuador. So now that we've heard more or less what the operating environment is looking like, some of the risks and challenges, and also the investments being targeted in Latin America's key markets in mining for 2022, I just wanted to close out our discussion by asking each of you how you would rate, in general, overall terms, the outlook for mining next year in each of your countries under coverage, using a rating of positive, neutral, or a negative, or use caution outlook. I can say first off that for both Colombia and Ecuador, our overall assessment is really a neutral outlook for 2022, while in Peru we have assigned a kind of neutral to negative outlook, primarily because of the political uncertainty and some difficult social license situations. So I'd like to hear your assessments for the rest of the region. Who would like to go first?
I think that for Argentina, the outlook is neutral, but for Chile, we have maybe an outlook neutral for some aspects, like social license or investment, but we have a negative outlook for political risk and new policies. And we also have a positive outlook for things related to environmental and permitting. So let's see.
Okay, thank you. Sam, Rogério?
Yes, for Brazil, Laura, I think that it's fair to say that you have a neutral outlook, but with a positive bias. On the downside, we have the China situation, the Chinese scenario, which is causing a lot of uncertainty for Brazilian operators. And he also talks about the tax increases, but as I already mentioned, this pressure is reducing. And the upside, companies in Brazil, mining companies in Brazil, count with a strong cash flow generation and the cash position to go ahead with investments. And also in the upside, if you compare with other countries in the region where there is a lot of conversation about the nationalization and interventions, for government interventions, I don't see this, there is no such a risk in Brazil, even considering the election process. There is no speculation of a rupture. There is no talks in Brazil regarding nationalization of the mining segment in Brazil. So I count that as a upside performance, you know.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Sam.
Yeah, so the outlook we have for policy or political risk in Mexico for 2022 is negative. I think that's clear given the actions taken to date by the current administration and the proposals to bring lithium resources under state control. It's really something to watch out for next year. In terms of social license and the environmental and permitting fronts and investment as well, I think in all of these areas, the outlook is, I would say, is broadly neutral. They're all challenging areas, but I think there's no clear sign that they're going to get any better or any more difficult in 2022. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. Well, that concludes our Mining Outlook 2022 discussion. I wanted to thank each of our BNamericas experts who joined us today to share their views. Thank you to everyone who is taking the time to listen, and wish everyone a very successful 2022. Thank you.